Rahubat, Moisa, Rahubat. We are back. We are back. Back. We are back. We are back with more Wu-Sabat. Rahubat. We got a little technical difficulties, but we'll work through it. Rahubat. I might be choppy. I'm not sure. Hopefully the sound is okay. Working on it. If it isn't, let's see. I'm not sure. I got to find a better way to test to make sure all is good, because I don't know if everyone is hearing me correctly. Let's see. Let me restart this. Let me restart something. Hold on. As I get this going, I'm just working on it, making sure everything is good. All right. So it looks like everything is good. Hopefully there was no real interruptions. But all right, Rahubat. We're back, right? With more Wu-Sabat. Kabul. Welcome. Welcome all to who come, who support, right? I always say support. Thumbs up, as they say, right? Share. If no one knows you exist, you don't exist. If no one knows you exist, you don't exist, right? So that's why we share, to let people know we exist. If we want Wu-Sabat to travel throughout the planet, we have to share. We have to do our part. I'm doing my part by putting out the right knowledge, by teaching the right knowledge. You all have to do your part. If you support what we're doing, if you really think what we're doing is extremely important, we got to share. We got to spread the word, right? Each one teach one, as we say. Each one teach one. So it's so important that we share in order to grow. I have to be better. We all have to be better. I know I need to put more data out for the public. I highly demand and command you all to study, to research, to do your part to help, right? I'm always telling you guys to become members, right? Support what we're doing at nupocc.com, where is our, nupo.org. Go to our website, nupo.org. Become a member. You click on become a member. Support what we're doing. Memberships, $19.99, $20 a year. That's nothing. Discounted membership, you get basically 6 years for $99. So it's even less than $20 a year. It's nothing. This won't grow without you all support. This cannot grow without you support, your all support. This is how you pay for all the work that we do, all the lectures, all the data, all the information. If we're supporting and helping you all, then I say put in work, do your part, right? We need our own social platform. It's only going to work. We need tens of thousands of people. I can't even really make effective changes on the website because of the fact that, doing these websites, it's thousands of dollars and I don't get the support. I'm, paying out of my own pocket. The little support that I do get, people from time to time do support, do donate, but, we're not really growing because we don't have the viewership. We don't have the support, but we can grow. I've talked about before, 6 degrees of separation. You're 6 degrees away from anyone on the planet, really. So we can get the support if you spread the word on the power of what we're doing. If you explain the doctrine the way we are explaining it, to make that make sense. I try my best to make sense of the doctrine, because I know there's a lot of people who do try their best to teach the doctrine, but sometimes it doesn't make sense. The master teacher kind of always recommended us to teach as a triad. I think that's important. It's sad that I don't teach as a triad with 2 other brothers or sisters that are here with me, because 3 minds are always better than 1. And I think that's one of the reasons why the master wanted that, because there are things that I may be, firm and strong in, and where a brother or student female is not strong in, and there are things they're strong in I'm not strong in. I know that for a fact. There are students that are strong in certain areas that I'm not, and I know I'm strong in certain areas they're not, because our doctrine is that vast. That's why we call him the master teacher, because our doctrine, he covered so many areas that of information that our people need to know in this day and time. The master teacher, by way of the Nathar. There's so much, that we've forgotten within the last 6,000 years that's so important for our people to know. And so the master have put out so much data. So it's a serious study. Anyone who's studying our doctrine, it's no joke. But this is why I dedicated my time to try to help students of our doctrine and make sense of it, to really comprehend it to the best of their ability. So I try to do my part in that. And all I ask is you all to do your part, right? And so, you do your part, support what we're doing, put the data out, always, live by our core principles, right? The core cultural principles I've gone over. I recommend studying those lectures and spread it, because the lectures I did on the core principles of Wu-Sabat, not too many people looked at those lectures, and though it's 2 lectures I did on that particular topic. And I highly recommend you all studying the core principles, because the core principles is it really, I try my best to really help students really understand what this doctrine. So this lecture right here, the core cultural principles of Wu-Sabat, and then I did it again, the core cultural principles of Wu-Sabat explained. So I went over the concepts, and then we, went into it explained. So we're not, it should be thousands, especially so many people who are looking at the culture of Wu-Sabat. It should be tens of thousands studying these principles. Really, because how can you sit there and say, call yourself a Sabian, a Nawapian, if you don't understand the principles of our culture? Trust me, I've come across many, and I mean many students who really don't understand the principles of our culture, which is why they don't live it. And this is also the reason why I argue a lot of people who come into our doctrine who left, because they didn't understand the principles. And if you understood the principles before you came in, then you will know, is this for me or is this not for me? You would know that. Now, I don't know if I'm choppy again. I hope I'm not, because I see, hopefully I'm not choppy with my sound. But let us keep going. Hopefully all is well, because I'm looking at a glitch on my software. But I'm talking about the principles and the importance of the principles. And I did these lectures, and I'm telling you all to study these 2 lectures right here. These 2 lectures that I'm pointing at. You see my cursor on my screen. These are extremely important lectures that we did. Okay. And it's to help anyone who's studying our doctrine to make sense of the culture, how you should live, why we call ourselves Sabians, and how to be a Sabian, and what we live by, what our goals and aspirations are. I try to show you in our doctrine where the master teacher is explaining these things, so that anyone who's studying the doctrine is to help you pinpoint concepts. It's necessary, and it's very, very helpful. So with that being said, for those who do not know me, again, my name, for those who do not know me, my name is Peti Sina Tebtu Re'e, and I've been over a 35-year student teacher of the profound doctrine of the master teacher, who has been teaching us our ancient culture. We identify as Wu-Sabat, also known as Wu-Nawap. That is about teaching our people to live in harmony with natural nature. Wu-Sabat, or Wu-Nawap, or Nawapo, is our original culture. It was a culture where we lived in tune with nature. Today they call it animism. But this was the culture prior to these religious cultures that taken over the planet, right? Within the last 2,000 years, these religious dogmas, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism has dominated the planet within the last 2,000 years. But prior to that, our people lived in harmony with nature, and that was called noon culture, or Wu-Sabat, or Nupu. These are just principles of what we understood nature to be, right? The forces of nature. We lived by that, and so Africa and the Americas culture was all rooted in nature, being in tune with nature. Now today, Western culture is just the opposite. Western culture is adverse to nature. Everything about Western culture is based on artificial everything. And we argue living in artificial culture and disrespecting nature, not being mindful of nature, is a destructive way of life that will not only destroy us, but the planet we live on. And we see that. When we take an educated analyzation of Western culture within the last 500 years of capitalism, socialism, Marxism, all the isms that they came up with, communism, fascism, all their isms, we see the planet in a very dire state, the planet in a very depressive state, because of the culture. So it's sad, it's bad, and but this is the situation that we're in. And so we're trying our best to convince our people to get away from Western culture. And that's what today's discussion is about. Today's topic that we want to focus on, because last week we dealt with, divine love, right? And that was, love and unity we talked about. Now, what's preventing the love and the unity? And so today we're talking about what, Western culture equals a negative mind and self-hate. That's what's preventing the love and unity of us as a people is the negative mind, or the negative ego, the negative ego and self-hate. And what we're saying and what we're going to talk about today is how Western culture creates the negative ego and perpetuates self-hate for our people, for woolly hair, melanated people, Black people all over the globe. Western culture creates a negative ego and perpetuates self-hate. That's what we're saying. So with that being said, first question, right? What is the ego? First question, what is the ego? Let me say this: 9 ether is vividness and 6 ether is vagueness. If anyone have a question about that, please ask in the comments. Also, remember, ask questions. Put questions in the comments. Make comments. It's important. It's very important for discussion purposes, for us to talk. Because if we're not communicating, we're not creating relationships. And if we're not creating relationships with each other, how can we grow? Right? We succeed as a part of all. We fail as individuals. If we're going to stay in our individual cubby holes, all of us are at a loss. Unity is about us coming together, because that's power. As long as we stay individualized, separated, there's no power in that. And we're at a huge disadvantage. So put comments. Let's create those discussions. Analyze the lectures. Ask questions pertaining to the lectures, though. Not off topic. Our people love doing that. Stay focused. You're in class. Most of y'all, I hope y'all went to school. Teacher tells you stay focused to the topic, right? Stay focused to the topic, because the goal is to make sure you comprehend the topic so we can see results. That's the point. Because our people really don't realize what Western culture is doing to us. They don't realize how Western culture perpetuates a negative ego and self-hate that's destroying us as a people. This is an extremely important topic for everyone to comprehend. Because once we do comprehend it, then we realize, our people then realize, we got to get away from this culture. And that's what we teach. The culture we should be living is our original culture, which is Wu-Sabat or Nuwapu. So, question, what is the ego? Answer, the ego is defined as the knowledge and awareness of the self. The ego is what allows us to be aware of self, to do things for the self, such as eating, dressing, cleaning ourselves, working, playing, studying, exploring, singing, dancing, all the things that your mind tells you what to do with your body. The ego is the motivating factor that fulfills your emotional needs. I repeat that again. The ego is the motivating factor that fulfills your emotional needs. The ego is required for human experience to function as a productive person within a society, right? Let's say that again. The ego is required for human experience to function as a productive person within a society. The ego, like all things in natural nature, must be balanced. We call that ma'at. Okay? In order to be healthy for the individual person. So you have to have a balanced ego. This is important, family. Too much of anything creates an imbalance, which creates a state of disarray and chaos. If the ego tells you to overeat or to spend unnecessary money on clothes, cars, jewelry, recreational activities, too much work, or play too much, all things in excess would be the cause of a negative ego, or what we call an adverse ego, right? So you have to be balanced with you need the ego, right? You need your ego, but the problem, what we're talking about is this imbalancement when you do too much, when you become self-absorbed. That's now it's went into the negative aspect of the ego, okay? Any person, place, or thing that encourages you to overindulge your ego or do things that you know is bad for yourself and others would be considered a negative influence. There are two main motivating factors within natural nature that governs the egos of humans, which are people's desire to gain pleasure and people's desire to avoid pain. These are two of the most powerful motivating factors of human life that can work positively or negatively depending on how and why you made a decision. People using drugs, having sex, eating, playing sports or games are all actions motivated by one's desire for pleasure. People ignoring injustice by governments, ignoring those who lie, cheat, and steal from others, people's refusal to fast, exercise, eat healthy are all actions or behaviors motivated by people's desire to avoid pain, right? That's why people are minding my business. And that's because you don't want to deal with the pain of what that may be and all. So these are the factors how the ego is governed. The ego, your ego, is you pushing yourself to either get pleasure or is you controlling yourself to avoid pain. The main point is that the human ego governs all actions and deeds, regardless of those actions being positive or negative. Okay. And part of this negative, when we say Western culture perpetuates a negative ego, there was a documentary that came out last year. It's called "They're Trying to Kill Us." They're trying to kill us. It's right here on YouTube. Let me see, find it. Oh, it's right here on YouTube. Let's see. This right here, you can type it in. They're trying to kill us. Family, take your time. I highly recommend you all watching this video. It's right here on YouTube. They're trying to kill us. It's excellent. It's 2 hours, and it's excellent. It's very detailed. It starts off a little slow, but it's really informative. This is really should be a class. A lot of this stuff should be put in a curriculum because our people need to be taught this. And I'm talking about woolly hair melanated people, because it's really this video is kind of talking what I'm talking about today, and from a different perspective, because we're going a little bit more detailed, talking about the ego, the personality, which is really a spiritual thing. This is where I'm coming from. But this video right here is just talking about the lifestyle that we're living here in the West and what's happening to us, and the fact that this culture is trying to kill us. I mean, it's real talk. It's real talk. Let's see. So I want to also reference some actual facts, the books that the master teacher put out on this, very topic. So let's see. If we go to actual facts, what's that? 20. This is actual facts, I believe, number 26, page 148. No, not this. This is right here, page 41. Page 41, go to 1. This is actual facts, sex, minds, and slaves. Actual facts, number 26. All right. So this is what I'm looking at. And I'll go to page, 41. Here, paragraph 324, the master teacher writes, to make it clear, according to the rules of the code of the opposites, sooner or later, pleasure must offset pain, right? So this is a principle within natural nature, the concept of pain and pleasure. The master talks about this. Here's another actual facts. This is actual facts. What's this, page 26? Let's see, page 26. Actual facts number 24, right? Who you are, not what you accept. Actual facts number 24, and you go to page 26. Paragraph 49, it says this. Remember, pain and pleasure must offset each other. Those who represent the living and those who represent the dead cannot be equal in the same place at the same time. Okay, and so pain and pleasure, these are pain, and the science of pain and pleasure are principles within nature, actually rules of nature. That this is what motivates humans beings. Every action you make from the time you wake up every morning to the time you go to sleep, you're doing things to gain pleasure, right? That's why we eat, for pleasure. And you do things to avoid pain. That's why you wash up. You wash up to keep yourself clean, because who likes being dirty, right? That creates pain. I should hope it's painful to be dirty. Because if you don't feel pain when you're dirty, it's something wrong there. All right. So I hope that makes sense. So let's go back. So I just wanted to show how the master teacher, he focuses on this concept. It's very important. As students, you understand this concept of pain and pleasure, which dictates your ego behavior. Okay. Let's see. Anywhere else? Beings live by the opposites of their genes. Actual facts number 24. Let's see. Actual facts number 24. He talks about it again. Let's go there and let's see if I can go there. Actual facts number 24. I don't know if I pulled that one up. Let's see if we can find actual facts number 24. Who you are, not what you accept. Oh, okay. We just read that one. So let's go back. Actual facts. What other page? Let's see. Hold on. Bear with us. Page 1, superiors live by the opposites of their genes. So that's what he's saying on page 1. Let's see what says here. Let's see. This is on page 1. It says, do you know there is a difference between who you are by nature and what you accept by nature? You are Negroids or Nagato, African. That is who you are. Now, as to what you have accepted, that is what you allow yourself to transform into in your mind. in your belief system or religion, even to the point where you have been removed from your own place of origin, now called Africa, and you now accept or believe that you are other than yourself and nature, even to the point where you live by the laws of the opposite of your genes, your DNA, your race, and your kind. Okay. And so the master is talking about how this culture, Western culture, we live adverse to our own nature. And this is a huge issue. And now you got, brothers and sisters who call themselves FBA, Foundational Black Americans, and they got this anti-African issue, talking about Africans sold us. Why are we talking about some Africans? They sold us. And that's true. Africans sold us, but which is, they're guilty. Those who did that, of course, not all continent. There are those who are guilty of that, but you can't exclude the people who bought you, because to buy a person is a crime. That's criminal behavior. So the criminal who sold you and the criminal who purchased you, and the person who purchased you treated you like garbage for the last 500 years. So the criminal who who sold you, they committed their crime that one time. The criminal who purchased you, had been committing crimes against us for the last 500 years. Keep that in mind. keep that in mind. Who's the greater criminal? It's like we gotta use reasoning, family. We gotta use reasoning when we're talking to our people. All right, so let's keep going. Okay, so now number 2 question. What is self-hate and how is it created? What is self-hate and how is it created? Right? All right, so self-hate is when a person does things to themselves and others of their kind that is harmful and the cause of suffering and pain. Self-hate is a product of low self-esteem, lack of moral responsibility, and lack of respect for self and kind. People who suffer from self-hate have a negative perception of themselves and their kind. People who suffer from self-hate will try to alter themselves, be around others not of their kind. Altering, like Michael Jackson. We look at a picture of Michael Jackson when he was young, right? You can see he was black. And then when he became older as an adult, you can clearly see he altered himself to look like a European, a Caucasian. That's self-hate. You trying to alter how you look. He was doing surgeries. It seemed like the whole Jackson family. You look at a picture of the whole Jackson family, they all was doing that. Surgeries to alter themselves, to look more European. That's a product of self-hate, and I'm telling you, this is Western culture. Put that in there. This culture did that to them. Everyone who has a clear mind can see that. So people who suffer from self-hate will try to alter themselves, be around others not of their kind, will talk bad about their kind, even to the point of helping others hurt or harm their own kind. People who suffer from self-hate usually have a false perception or distorted perception of themselves or their kind. People who suffer from self-hate usually behave the way they do because of a negative ego perception. This type of behavior is created when a person is young from negative childhood experiences that shape their personality as they grow older. Young children seeing all white this, white, the white man is God. The white man is the richest person on the planet. Bill Gates, Elon Musk. Our children are seeing, white man's Superman, they're Batman. They're Aquaman. They're all these great things. They're Wonder Woman, so on and so forth. All this power. They see the power on TV, the wealth. They go outside. They see white people own and control everything. It makes them want to identify with whiteness. It's inevitable. You can't help it. And then you look at Africa, and everything they show you about Africa is negative. The war, the poverty, the degradation of the people. The lack of unity. Why would you want to be black? White looks like it's doing everything right. Black looks like it's doing everything wrong. So that creates low self-esteem. It's natural and very effective. White people understand how they how they push their psychology of white greatness. But it's real. So I repeat, this type of behavior is created when a person is young, from negative childhood experiences that shape their personality as they grow older. A lot of people on earth suffer from this condition, but Black people more than all others due to global racism, white supremacy. Black people for 500 years under racism, white supremacy have been the victims of character assassination. So when we say global racism, white supremacy, we're saying the white men push that they're God. They got Black people worshiping the white man as God. I don't know if you heard about how the Hebrew Israelites were in Kenya, a group of Hebrew Israelites in Kenya, and the Black African Kenyans attacked the Hebrew Israelite brothers because they were trying to tell them that Jesus is Black. And the Kenyans believe that Jesus is white. And they attacked the brothers. You can look it up. It's on YouTube for those who are not familiar with that, Hebrew Israelites. I don't know if I can bring that, because I don't know the name of that group. I don't know the name of that group that was in Kenya. But those brothers were it's sad, they were attacked by people in Kenya just for trying to tell the Black Africans that they should not be worshiping the white man as God. The white man is not your God, but this is the self-hate that it's no joke. It's sad. It's very sad. And the only way to fix that is with right knowledge. We have to give our people the correct knowledge because they've been given the wrong knowledge. That's how we fight it. You can only fight falsehood with truth. Okay, I can't find it. You can look it up though. It was a real big story for those who are not familiar with it. But it just happened, I think, a couple weeks ago. All right, so white supremacy had Black people for the past 500 years under racism, white supremacy have been the victims of character assassination, right? They always, Black people, this was bad. White people invaded our lands, conquered, enslaved, colonized us, and then decided to humiliate us even further by having us worship them as God, as well as build and supply their nations with valuable resources from our land, right? They're bleeding our Africa dry. They're really trying to bleed the continent of resources. They've been doing it for the last 150 years now. They even created their own scientific theories of how we were primitive, unintelligent, have low moral character, or having no history worth talking about. They make cartoon caricatures of us having big lips, big butts, lazy, kinky hair. That's a sex reference. Why they call it, say we have kinky hair. That kinky is something to do with sex, right? Or our hair is nappy, it's hard and coarse, right? They impoverished us from enslavement by making us work for free at the threat of death, right? That's the only way you can get a person to as a slave to work for free. You got to threaten to kill him. You got to threaten to kill him. The cartoons in the 40s of Black. Yeah, so these are the cartoons that the big lips that they made. All of this created self-hate. Our people had to watch this in the 30s and the 40s. They had to watch these caricatures of us, Black stereotype, cartoons, making fun at our features, us eating watermelon, us being lazy. They all they did was, was clown us. They clowned our hair, the nose, the lips. You see this? And so all of this was designed, all of this created a really strong self-hate. And this was in the 1930s, these cartoons. 1940s. They showed us as stupid. All of this is what built the self-hate among our people. Look at this: the African booty scratcher, the Africans boiling people in a pot. All of this to make you hate Africa. That's what all this FBA stuff is all about. They don't realize it's in the genes. It's in the genetics passed down. This level of self-hate. It's a lot. This is a whole research just on what they've done to us, the psychological programming that they've done to us as a people. This need to be really studied, and we need to be educating our children about what's been done to us, because it's very, so they sexually rape Black women and children by the thousands. They rape Black men in high numbers as well. They killed those who resisted by the thousands. They gave meanings in their language. Everything good is as white, everything bad as black, or dark, or night, or shadow, right? It's a dark day, it's gloomy, it's a shadow that was dark, right? The Black Sabbath, Black Ball, Black male, black sheep, everything negative. You all know that. But we have to teach this to our children. We have to educate our children how this psychological programming, which is why we can worship the white man as God when you used to be worshiping the Black woman and the Black man as God. Worship another race of people as your God. No one should be doing that. No one, you don't worship another people as your God. That's insanity. This is something we can't do. We cannot do that, family. Can't worship another people. So these types of treatments for decades, centuries, until this very day, with no end in sight for the most, will naturally create low self-esteem, self-doubt, self-loathing, and self-hate. This type of mindset is so powerful and pervasive that it becomes coded within the DNA of the victims of such abuse, family. I want to talk about this. A sister is a doctor. She's a medical doctor. Dr. Bianca Jones Martin explains how trauma is passed down into our genes. This is a sister doing genetic research on this. How trauma is passed down into our genes. It's passed into the DNA. It's actual facts. Family, I'll bring her up. Also, I want to actual facts number 15. I want to bring that up. Also, let's see. Actual facts number 15, where the master talks about this self-hate thing. This is on page 8. Let's see, page 10. Let's see, go here. Actual facts number 15. Number 15. Interrogate. To integrate ingredient, right? So he's talking about integration. He says, don't integrate, interrogate, research people, find out their genetics, their history, their origins. He always told us that with anyone, just mate with a person without understanding their genetics. This is important. So he says this is on page 8. He says, so in fact, Jesus is in the image of God, his father, who is in fact himself, right? The white man is God concept. This is what we talking about the pages before. It says this kind of teaching is what enspells the mind. Blind faith and weak, unproven beliefs, mental captivity by fear to reject this man-made up story. If your God, Allah, is not human, it cannot be of your own nature, and therefore cannot tell you your true course by nature. God, Allah, or Hashem, their God is a ghost or spirit, right? They have us worshiping God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, 3 in 1. That's what Christianity teach. They say that God is a holy ghost. It's a ghost spirit force. What's a ghost? Ghost is the spirit of the dead. So when people are calling on God or Jesus or whatever, you're calling on unfamiliar spirits of the dead. That's insane. Our people, because we lost our spiritual science, we don't realize this. We don't realize what we're doing. He goes on to say, you must read it, and the Muslim Quran makes the same claim that the spirit of Allah, right? These are unseen spirit forces. You're calling on Allah. Thus cannot help you, the living in flesh. You were calling on these unseen spirit forces, and we're physical. Thinking that these unseen forces are going to help us, when the helping hand you're looking for, as the master teacher always says, is at the end of your own arm. So, with their teachings, which only tries to prepare you for afterlife or being dead, all their religions promises deals with once you are dead, you will get this or that. What about now, while you are of the living? A lie. What does their religions do for you that you can't do on your own? The Jews speak about Abraham, Elijah, and Moses, all dead. The Christians speak about Jesus, Paul, and Mary, all dead. The Muslims speak about Muhammad, Abu Bakr, and Ali, all dead. And each teach from a holy ghost called Gabriel or Jibril, an angel or spirit being of the dead, who was sent by Hashem or Theos or Allah, all unseen spirit forces or God. The dead leading the dead to the mental and physical grave or death. This we Nawapians call the spell of ignorance. This deadly disease did not only happen here in the West. The Mukasu spread their religion's disease world over. Even in Africa, they invaded with Judaism. You find that in Ethiopia, Christianity in Egypt, and Islam in the Sudan. And from them spread the disease westward, north, and south until many Africans die mentally and even physically by accepting the religious disease of self-rejection, self-image, and self-hate. And they bred hate of self and kind. You are still sick with these diseases of self-hate, distrust of kind, all done by the disease of their religions and living cultural systems, right? The culture, Western culture, created this disease. Their religious culture, their social culture, created this level of self-hate. This is why, like I said, they ran the Hebrew Israelites out of Kenya. 80%. I said, what is it, 80% of Africans are into these Abrahamic religions? That's 80%, man. Are worshiping the white man as God. 80%. It's crazy. That's crazy. That's the mentally dead. Let's see. I want to find this sister who did the genetic research, Bianca. Let's see if I can find her. That beloved sister. Let's see. Where is this at? Let's see if I can find where this beloved sister, brilliant sister who's been doing genetic research. And I think it's good for us to be aware of this kind of research, because your genes are everything. Your genetics is everything. The master teacher talks about this in the proof, Actual Facts number 108. He said the most important thing he can teach us is the importance of our genetics. You mess up your genetics, everything else is messed up. And this is why we're dealing with our challenges, because of the last 6,000 years. Our genetics have been messed up for 6,000 years. We've been messing up our genetics, and now we're at the worst. Today, what we're doing to our genetics is unthinkable. And your genetics will dictate your nature, your behavior, your way you are. If you mess up your genetics, you destroy your genes because you don't respect it. You don't understand the science of it. You know, you don't do anything to preserve your genetics because you don't, women are smoking, drinking, whatever, while having sex and getting pregnant and think that doesn't have an effect on their children. The bad diet that we eat, think that doesn't have an effect on your children. It does. And we're wondering why we're chaotic today. The black on black crime, all the things we do to each other, we don't see the effects of it. I don't see it. Let me see if I can just bring her up so you can see it. Dr. Bianca Jones, because I at least want you all. This is the sister, beautiful sister, and she does. Look her up, right? Look her up. She's does studies on genetics. She's a geneticist, and she's talked about how trauma is passed down through your genetics. Trauma is passed down through your genetics. It's commercials, YouTube and commercials. Okay, so this is the sister. She's with that brother Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's interviewing her, and they're talking about scientists discuss epigenetics and generational trauma. So she's been doing the research on it. She's been doing the research on how trauma is passed down through the genetics, your genes. So all the trauma we experienced during slavery, under racism, white supremacy, Jim Crow, the lynching, the nigga this, nigga that, calling us all these names, the movies I just showed, the cartoons, right? The black people with the big lips and big nose. And it's wonder why we're messed up. I should say, it's no wonder why we're messed up. All this negative stuff been passed down through our genetics. This is extremely important, family, to understand. Extremely important. That is really messed us up. So let's keep going. There's many I could go into, but let's keep going. All right, question number 3. How the toxic ego is preventing our growth and causing self-destruction, right? So how the toxic ego is preventing our growth and causing self-destruction. Negative ego has been the cause of all the suffering that Black people have been experiencing for the last 500 years. Negative ego is the cause why Dr. York is in prison and the cause why he has not been free from prison. Negative ego is the cause why we do not support each other, or why we have not created a community to govern ourselves as a tribe. Negative ego is the cause of the division we see among us worldwide. Negative ego causes a person to only focus on the self, forgetting all others, including friends, family members, or their race as a whole. Negative ego always has an excuse on why they do what they do, but hardly ever any positive solutions to challenges that confront them. It's always someone else's fault for this or that. One of the root causes of negative ego that we see today in Western culture is capitalism that teaches individuals to compete against each other for monetary rewards. These monetary rewards, aka money, are tied to every resource we need to live a comfortable life. People lie, cheat, steal, slander, gossip, kill, betray, and so much more for money due to the fact that this is what is needed to live a comfortable life. People will sell drugs, poison food, sell old or used things claiming it's new, or anything they can to make money. As Dr. Claude Anderson pointed out, during slavery, they used the concept of meritorious manumission to turn us against each other. So I've talked about this before. For those familiar with Dr. Claude Anderson, one beautiful scholar who talks about, he focuses on the economics for Black people, and he he taught about this concept during slavery, meritorious manumission, that a lot of black people never heard of. If you go to Google it, if you Google meritorious manumission, what it was is during slavery, meritorious, merit means a prize, a gift, something you do, you merit something. Meritorious manumission is to be free, right? You do something to get free. So meritorious manumission are things that an enslaved person can do to get free. There are three primary things. One, do something to enrich the slave master, right? To do something to enrich the slave master, something to make the slave master's life good or better. You was a phenomenal slave. That was one way to get manumission. Another way to get manumission was to save the life of the slave master, right? You had slaves that would fight the war, go into war for the slave master in their turn. If the slave master got drafted or something, you saw that during the Revolutionary War. They could send their slave to fight for them. And if the slave survives, they could be manumission, right? They could be manumission. And the other way they can get manumission was to tell the slave master if the other slaves were going to revolt, right? If they were going to, revolt. So you get manumission if you betrayed your people. You get manumission if you betray your people. So we were betraying each other back then. We betrayed ourselves in Africa. We betrayed ourselves here in America, and we're betraying, we're still betraying ourselves. Our people love selling each other out for money and status. Manumission, meritorious manumission. Study this. Teach this to your children. Teach this to your people, our family. We have to know this, what they've done to us. This is what created that self-hate. This is what created the self-hate. Meritorious manumission. So negative ego is the root of slavery, colonization, wars. All of these things people are doing to gain resources for an ideal lifestyle at the suffering of others. Slavery today has been modified with the employer-employee relationship, aka they call that neoliberalism we're living today. The employers gain wealth at the expense of the employees' time, labor, skills, knowledge, and sacrifices. Every example that I gave is rooted in individuals doing things at the expense of others. Negative ego is all about doing things for the self or personal gain, not caring about the effects of this behavior on persons, places, or things. We live in a world on the brink of self-destruction due to this blanket behavior of feeding one's ego. We live in a world where leadership uses their position and power at the expense of those they lead. The rich of the world are possessed with the desire to gain as much wealth and power regardless of any negative outcome that this has on people. Business owners set up stores in our communities, taking as much money as they can, never giving anything of real value back. These same business people take the money we give them to their communities to beautify, while our communities become impoverished. We see that. If you go, those who live in America, we see that, right? Chicago, messed up black areas. Atlanta, messed up black areas. New York, our areas impoverished. Baltimore, our areas impoverished. California, we're impoverished. Everywhere you see large black populations, our people are impoverished, right? And all the businesses in those communities are owned by other people. And so every day we're going into these businesses, giving them our money every day, the grocery stores, the hair salons, the beauty supplies, the laundromats, the gas stations, every day. Just stand outside in any black community, stand outside Walmart, and then you see black people going in and out, in and out, in and out, every day, giving money, in and out, in and out. And they're just getting poor and more poor and more poor. And they're making the business owners richer and richer and richer. And they're sucking you like a vampire that sucks you and bleeds you dry, because they give nothing back to those communities, And why do we allow this to happen? We're out of our minds. We supposed to control the businesses in our communities, and the business owners should live in our communities. That way they will want to enrich their community, build their community up. But if none of the business people live in your community, they take the money out of your community and they go to their community and they use that money to enrich their community, to make it, to beautify it. We can't see there's something wrong with that picture, family. As long as we choose to live in a culture that is designed to create suffering by educating people to live by the negative ego, we will never experience any growth. Dr. York presented the most credible solution to these issues by promoting that we must live like our ancestors, of, for, and by each other. In order for Dr. York's plan to work, one must let go of their negative ego rooted in the focus of self-interest. And that's really the issue, you know. As long as that negative ego pervades your consciousness, because this is what we learn how to behave here in the West, we can never unify. We can never unify, you know. So let's go to, I talked about this last discussion about the ego. The master teacher talks about it in this particular scroll right here, the purity and neatness scroll. This, what's that, page 20? Page 20. Let's go here. The Holy Tabernacle. What is this? Holy Tabernacle Ministries Guide to Better Living, Purity and Neatness, right? And let's see. We go to page 20 right here. Discipline and organization. Discipline and organization. Question: how do we discipline and organize ourselves? Answer: self-control or discipline and the ability to organize is necessary in Nawapu. Every aspect of Nawapu is order and discipline, right? Order, ma'at. Our whole culture is based on order, right? From the physical to the spiritual. In order for you, the children of the Nathar, to be accepted in the eyes of the Nathar, you must constantly make an effort to control the I and the ego, right? The ego. And practicing living a life of order and discipline. The ego is a self-abrogating aspect of the mind. It is the ego which separates the individual from unity with others and within him or herself, for the ego asserts I-ness. Question: what is the ego? The ego is the greatest obstacle to peace, for it is that which occupies the mind with whether we are better or worse, possess more or less, and have greater or lesser power than others. The ego is attended by desire, pride, anger, delusion, greed, jealousy, lust, hatred, racism, and leadership, right? Leaders, most leaders are all self-interest. They don't care nothing about the people they lead. The ego is the most difficult aspect of the mind to control, for its nature is such that it deludes even while one is striving to overcome it. When the ego is subdued, energies can then be utilized constructively for personal growth and the service of others, right? That's when your ego is in balance, you know, when it's constructive, it's in balance. It's not in that negative state that the master is referring to. Now, question: how can we uproot the ego? Answer: the ego can be uprooted by subduing it and suppressing it. It must be evident by now that being righteous or being a child of the Nathar or meditating or being saved or being religious entails far more than just making a claim or sitting with eyes closed and legs crossed, saying, I am God, or lip confession. It demands rigorous introspection and the overhauling of one's personality, life patterns and values. Behavior correction and the uprooting of weaknesses are relatively easy adjustments to make. The The petty, obstinate egoism behind the mask of the human personality is one of the biggest hurdles to overcome, for it veils the light within, supports surface thoughts, and perpetuates its own habitual feelings and actions. This lower, self-arrogant nature must be whittled down, for if it persists in retaining its limited, false values, no amount of spiritual practice will bear fruit. Too often people profess of being righteous, yet they are unwilling to eradicate the lower nature and change the old habits. Clinging to them, they refuse to even admit the need for change. This type of individual will never make any real progress, for without radical transformation of the lower nature, one goes nowhere. It is not easy to change deeply ingrained habits, and a sincere person who just attempting to change often feels helpless against them. But regular spiritual practice, untiring selfless service, association with spiritually minded people, and strong determination to eradicate egoism, a powerful but selfless will is developed. One must introspect and discover all weaknesses and defects. The transmitting of a lower nature to a higher nature demand full and heartfelt dedication, right? And so here's the master teachers, going into what the ego is and how to deal with it. So take note, family. Always, as a reminder, watch these lectures more than once. There's a lot of data. I know these lectures are long. Take your time, study these discussions, analyze it, and focus how you can become better so that we can eventually get to the point where we all start working together, because only unity will solve our problems, family. And we can't unify if you're stuck in the ego. You're focused only on yourself. That's the problem. Let's keep going. Also, forgive me if I make any mistakes. I know I do. But you can bring it to my attention. I'll make any corrections as necessary. I always like to give that disclaimer. So when I forget to talk about it, just know that, that's a reality. We all make mistakes, but we work to perfect ourselves. That's the whole goal of being a Sabian. Number 4, relationships are our greatest commodity. That's a statement. Relationships are our greatest commodity. Our response. When people are able to relate to each other, then they can work with each other. The negative ego causes separation in the mind, which is the barrier to cooperation. I remind you that the negative ego comes from the trauma of past experiences that are also passed down in our genes, right? We talked about that genetic transfer. Wu-Sabat has the power to overcome one's negative past if one applies the science of Wu-Sabat, which deals with the science of sound or vibrational healing, guided by a positive mindset, right? The master put out books called The Science of Sound Healing, right? And we put out another book, The Science of Healing, okay? All of these are very important books that the master teacher put out. If for those who may not know, let me just give you this, because some of you may not know about the books we did on the science of healing. So I just want to show a book that will show that. All right, so this is one of the scrolls right here, The Science of Sound Healing. You have parts 1 and parts 2, and part 2 on this, and then we had another scroll, which is the Science of Healing, right? And so, this is part 2, The Science of Sound Healing, part 2, The Science of Sound Healing, part 2. Okay, so I just wanted to show, and then we have Another book. These are very important scrolls. Very important scrolls. The science of healing. Science of healing. This is probably one of the most powerful scrolls that the master's written. I mean, he's written many powerful, and no one else teaches. This is why he's known as the master teacher. No one else teaches. No one else understands this science we're talking about. No one knows anything about the science of sound healing. But this is how you heal yourself of the negative ego, by studying this, this data and applying it, right? So the positive mind is the adversary to the negative mind. The positive mind is way more powerful than the negative ego. The negative ego runs from the positive mind because the positive mind always finds the upside to every challenge. The positive mind knows that the group is more important than the individual. The positive mind looks for other positive minds to work with as a group, for we succeed as a part of all and fail as individuals, right? We succeed as a part of all, fail as individuals. So the master teachers taught us principles, right? We always talk about the principles, what it means to be a Sabian, right? So we live by principles. We go over that in our core principles right here. What it means to be a Sabian: someone who is thoughtful and cares, someone who is helpful and honest, someone who is responsible and hardworking, someone who demands justice and honorable, someone who is righteous and humble, someone who is excited and cheerful, someone who is loyal and committed, someone who is kind and considerate, someone who is neat, clean, and orderly. And this is a quote from the 9 Ball books the master wrote. All power begins in the mind, be it political, economic, military, or scientific, because the body is just a framework and tool for the mind. Therefore, the prime power is mind power, from which all other powers develop and mature, including the power of liberation. 9 ether develops 9 reason. 9 reason develops 9 knowledge, and 9 knowledge develops 9 mind power, which is a prerequisite to woolly hair, nagado, mental and physical liberation, right? So you have to develop that 9 mind, but you can't do it without 9 ether. You have to, the part of sound healing is to harness 9 ether into the body. The master teacher wrote the book, Natural Ether Energy, on how to do that. He put out the book, Natural Ether Energy, how to harness ether into the body, how to harness this energy. The body runs off of energy, family. The body runs off of energy. It's ether energy. We call it life force energy. The body runs off that. When you go to sleep, the body is recharging with natural ether energy. Actual facts, number 25, natural ether energy. This is one again, another one of this powerful master teacher. Okay, the body runs off ether energy. The Mukasu is not going to tell you that. They're not going to. They're not going to tell you that. And like I've said many times before, they don't even talk about ether. They call that pseudoscience, right? Only the ancient cultures know that. Us as Africans, the Chinese know it. They call it chi, and the East Indians know it. They call it prana. They all know it in their science. Only the Europeans are ignorant to it. You have some scientists who do. Nikola Tesla, he was trying to tell them back in the day, everything is ether, but they suppress that knowledge, the Europeans, because ether is power. They know that. So they can't tell the general public about the power of ether and how you can harness ether into their body. It would destroy the healthcare industry. The billions of dollars they make in the medical industry, the pharmaceutical companies, they would be destroyed, family. Why they would tell you that you have this inherent power of ether that can heal yourself? They ain't giving you that knowledge. They want us to continue to suffer in ignorance. I mean, this is the actual facts. Question. Why blame Western culture as the root cause of negative ego and self-hate? Okay. Question. Why blame Western culture as the root cause of negative ego and self-hate? Well, I'll tell you why. Black people living in Africa and the Americas 500 years ago were doing just fine in our lands, minding our own business. We had our issues like everyone else. But what we did not do is invade other people's lands and push our issues or ways of living on them. White people chose to invade our lands and force their cultural concepts on us, and now look at our conditions. Plus, they had the nerve to tell us that invading us was their right by God, aka they call that manifest destiny concept that white people in America took from their fathers of Europe to conquer the so-called weak, or that they claim to bring us the light of so-called civilization. How can white people teach us anything about civilization when we, as Egyptians and Moors, even while enslaved, have been their educators? White people invading us has been nothing but a so-called nightmare, which is why I always like to refer to the doctrine of discovery. It talks about this. I've done lectures on that. The doctrine of discovery by the popes of Rome, right, told the European countries, in particular Spain and Portugal, that they need to invade Africa and the Americas to take our land, take our resources, and make and convert us to Christianity so we can worship the white man as God. That's what they taught. Their church pushed that. Invade us. They killed us, maimed us to push this white supremacy crap. Also, there's a really powerful book called Tropical Dependency. Tropical Dependency. Let's see if I can pull this up. It was written by this white lady, Mukaso female, in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Tropical Dependency. Tropical Dependency. She wrote the book. And this woman, her name is Lady Lagarde, for those who may not know her. She wrote this book, if I can find it, Tropical Dependency. I don't see it. Tropical Dependency. Where is it? Really, really important book. Really, really, really important book. If I can find it. Here it is. A Tropical Dependency. By Flora Lagarde. Very important book. This woman actually was the one who named the country Nigeria. Her husband was a lord of the British Empire. She named the country Nigeria because at that time, all of northern Africa, Central Africa, was called the Sudan. So from West Africa to East Africa was called the Sudan. And this Lady Lagarde, she was the one who renamed the Sudan to Nigeria, Western Africa. They started, renaming all the areas. And she called it Nigeria. She was the one who did that. So her and her husband, they were controlling Nigeria, that territory. And she decided to write this book, Tropical Dependency. This book came out, I think, 1906. And she put this book out. And she says this. Check this out. Here's her. Her introduction, she confesses that England and Europe in general are dependent on materials and resources coming from Africa, right? Because Europeans like to say, slavery really didn't make us all that rich. You know how they love to lie. She wrote a book explaining how the British Empire was dependent on controlling their colonies, particularly Africa. What she say here? So she confesses that England and Europe in general are dependent on materials and resources coming from Africa, which explains the title Tropical Dependency. She further confessed that without the resources of the tropics, European mercantilism could not have functioned as the worldwide enterprise that it had become. She speaks of slavery as though it is a God-given right of Europeans not only to own slaves in general, but to own Africans as slaves in particular. She makes no moral justification for this claim, except that in her opinion, the European is a bearer of civilization and light to the dark places of the world. You see that mentality? The white woman has it, the white man has it. It's well documented. Anybody can do the research. There's tons of them who was saying these things. They all been brainwashed to think that they supposed to, rule us. So go back to my question. Why blame Western culture as a root cause of negative ego and self-hate? Because they put their culture into our minds. We now behave and think like they do now. There's nothing African about us anymore. We honestly think like, dude, look at this the stuff we put out. I'm talking cash money, right? Cash money. Money ain't a thing. You see what we're obsessed with? How that ego works and all. You got all these different rappers. I put it right here. Where we at? This is what's this? Birdman and Cash Money. Money to blow. They got so much money to blow. Really? These brothers from Louisiana. Our people are suffering in Louisiana. They really think they had money to blow? With all the suffering around them, they got money to blow, really. Do you see the mentality that they done to us? Here, money ain't a thing. Jermaine Dupri, money ain't a thing, really. He don't see the suffering in Atlanta. That's where he's from. Jay-Z doing it. Jay-Z's in the video. Money ain't a thing. He come from Marcy Projects. You can go to Marcy Projects right now in Brooklyn. The people are suffering. Money ain't a thing. This is the mentality, this ego, this negative ego that they condition us to think like. Who else? You got Wu-Tang, Cream, cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money, dollar bill, y'all. See that? Get the money, dollar bill, y'all. It's all about the money. See that ego, that mindset they put in our heads? Who you got here? Floyd Money Mayweather. Look at this. Pictures of him with money. Obsessed with money. and we can't blame them. Who else do we blame? Look at it. Look at his behavior. I'm like, you can see this all over our culture and black culture in America. You see this insanity, the way we behave. Who do we blame? It's insane. It's sad. With all the suffering, it's one thing to promote, your wealth and power, but not while your people are suffering. That's the ego. You can only do that if you got that kind of ego, where you don't care. Look at the names we call ourselves, right? Murder Inc. Murder, it's murder. This is a rap. For those who don't know, that's a rap label. They all, in fact, Whitey got rid of all those labels. He destroyed these brothers because of the amount of money they were making. That's a whole nother thing, right? But we go Murder Inc. That's what we want to identify with murder. Murder Inc. comes from the days of what's that? Al Capone. Benny Siegel. These were Jews that were, killers for hire. We're going to name ourselves after that. Rockefeller Records. Rockefellers are known. The Rockefellers made their money out of exploiting the labor of people. Research Rockefeller, how they made money, how they treated the workers back in the early 1900s, 1800s. This is who we want to cover. Death Row. Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre. Really? You call yourself Death Row? What's that? Biggie Small, Junior Mafia. See that? Junior? We're Junior Mafia. We're below the big mafia. This is the mindset of us. Insane mindset. And like I said, Floyd Money Mayweather, who loves to show how much money he has. Why are we doing this when the white man admits that the wealthiest man in history was the African ruler Mansa Musa. Look at all the gold the ancient Egyptians show. Look at the gold that the rulers of Ghana have. Right? You see that gold that the brothers in Ghana, for those who've seen, the Ghanaians, King of Ghana, the King of Ghana. This brother got nothing but gold all over himself. Gold, gold, gold. Ghana, man. He got nothing but gold. Gold. Ghana. In fact, that's what Ghana means. The Gold Coast, they call it, or whatever. And all. Gold. If you just look up the pictures, they got pure gold. He's covered in gold. We have unlimited wealth. Why are we worrying about fake money? We had the wealth, but we lost our mind. We lost our mind. They took our mind for us, so we don't know any better. Ego-based behavior is because we are under a hypnotic spell of ignorance promoted every day by Western culture. Foreigners right now are in Africa trying to find new ways to steal our wealth. They know we have wealth. What are we worried about? Money, fake money from the Europeans. We don't need it. But it's that ego, it's that self-hate, it's that negative mind. It's that negative mind. And they're talking about coming back and taking Africa from us. This is the Europeans' plan. And look, listen to this. I'll bring up a clip on it. They want to come back and take the continent. While we're sleeping on the wealth, we talking about the money that the Europeans here are giving us, this money we're chasing. Our wealth is on the continent, but we got all these black people talking about I'm FBA, I ain't African. I mean, that again, that's that negative mind, that self-hate. Listen to this. Check this out.
So I don't know how old you guys are, the people who are watching this, but if you're around my age or older, you might remember this company called Blackwater. I use company loosely here. What they really are is a private mercenary army. And what happened was, during the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War, the U.S. government contracted out to these people for various security services involving our army. So in other words, you had the U.S. military in the Middle East, but you also had these much higher paid private mercenary military members. Now, the other problem with Blackwater, the rules didn't really apply to them, right? And come to find out, this guy, Eric Prince, and the entire Blackwater organization, they are Christian fundamentalist extremists. So, I mean, that brew right there is a horrible, horrible mix. You have the Middle East, Muslim Holy Lands, and you have a Christian fundamentalist private mercenary army that the rules don't apply to them, and they're there because of the war on terror and that they're being funded by U.S. taxpayers. So I'm going to highly recommend to you, there's a book written by Jeremy Scahill, the phenomenal reporter for The Intercept. He wrote a book called Blackwater. Go read that book if you want to know more about them. Basically, they're just as extremist as you imagine them to be. There's endless stories of them massacring civilians and getting away with it, right? And he details one particular massacre that they were involved with. Well, this guy, Eric Prince, who's the head of Blackwater, he's been floating around for a while now, close to the positions of power. I think he's actually related to Betsy DeVos, who was the education secretary. Remember, Betsy DeVos, billionaire, right? So very rich, powerful Christian fundamentalist family,
under Trump,
close to power centers. And one of the things he did, after the height of the Iraq War and all the scandals that his company was caught up in, he changed the name. In fact, I think he changed it a number of times. Why? Just to try to avoid the bad press. Shake off all the, the skeletons in the closet and let's move on here. And by the way, this is a guy who advised Trump on a number of things. And my guess is Trump gets back in there. I'm sure he wants to be the one who's running everything foreign policy wise. Terrifying thought. In the same way that Trump took $100 million from Sheldon Adelson on 2 separate occasions. And then, would you look at that? He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. and he did the Abraham Accords, which is a giant middle finger to Palestinians, which helped lead to the October 7th attacks. It's a way to normalize relations between Israel and other Arab nations while saying F you to Palestinians. How'd that work out? Okay, that guy controlled Trump's foreign policy. Sheldon Adelson, he did. Now you're going to have people like Eric Prince back close to positions of power and authority if Trump gets reelected again. And this is not to say anything good about Biden, but this guy is more immersed in Republican politics. So he did an interview recently, this Eric Prince guy, and he really, really said the quiet part out loud. This is astonishing, guys, but you need to see this because you need to understand this is how these wealthy, powerful elites think. This is what they think, and this is how they act. Okay, listen to this.
Then it's time for us to just put the imperial hat back on to say, we're going to govern those countries if you're incapable of governing yourselves, because enough is enough. We're done being invaded.
Because our own national security risk is at stake.
Exactly.
National security interests are at stake.
You can say that about pretty much all of Africa. They're incapable of governing themselves and benefiting their citizens because the governments there are all about looting and pillaging and lining their pockets and going shopping in Paris instead of actually
hold on a
making the
second.
country
Hold on.
better.
People on the left are going to watch this. They're going to say, wait a minute, Eric Prince is talking about being a colonialist again.
Absolutely. Yes.
He says we should put the imperial hat back on, and he says, yes, I'm in favor of colonialism.
So you see this, family? They're talking about reinvading us, reinvading the continent, and that's what they, it's in the news with Burkina Faso. For those who you're following Burkina Faso, you should be paying attention because this is what they're talking about. They have a black general doing their dirty work, right? These people, man, the self-hate of our people is sad. It's so sad. And, because that country, Burkina Faso, which is right above Ghana, they're trying to get away from the Europeans. And so they're now, verbally attacking him. They've been trying to kill him. The brother Ibrahim Traore, like he's been getting constant assassination attempt after assassination attempt. They said something like 19 different assassination attempts. They just had one a week ago. You got this general here, this Negro general, basically black man, talking about, the Burkina Faso is the leader. The brother is treating the people bad. They taking the gold from the people. Just a bunch of lies. First of all, even if that was true, that got nothing to do with what's going on with America. They don't like they care about abuse in Africa. If they really cared about abuse in Africa, then they would stop the issue in Sudan, all that war that's been going on there, or they would stop the issue in Congo, all the war and chaos that's been going there. Why you worrying about Burkina Faso? Why they worrying about Burkina Faso? Because the one leader in Burkina Faso is talking about not wanting to deal with white people. now all of a sudden they're concerned about the people. Right? You're not concerned about the people who've been dying in the Sudan and the Congo, but now you're concerned about the people. And I heard some crazy brother on listen to on YouTube talk about they because he's friend with our enemy. This is a brother, black guy talking about he's friend with our enemy, Russia. That's why we talking about Burkina Faso. Our people really think we're part of the United States government. You're happy of getting the crumbs off their table, that you're willing to sell your soul to serve them. Our people are that silly. That's what I'm saying. They're chasing this fake money. We're sick people, and it's a spell. It's a really hypnotic spell of self-hate. There's no other way to explain it. It's sad. It's very sad. Of this self-hate, this negative mind. The master talks about this right here. I'll read it in this scroll, the breaking the spell. He wrote the scroll, breaking the spell on the blacks. I mean, this level of self-hate that we're dealing with and all. It's right here. What this is the breaking the spell on the blacks, right? Page 23. I've talked through this scroll many times, breaking the spell on the blacks, right? Breaking the spell. We're under a hypnotic spell. The master's been trying to say this for 60 years, that our people are under a spell of self-hate, spiritual ignorance. We're under a spell. We've been saying it for 60 years. We're sick. It's a sickness. We're possessed by spirit forces. We're possessed. And this is black people everywhere on the planet, not somewhere, everywhere. The whole planet. He says right here, what is keeping you spellbound? Answer. Part of the devil's evil spell that has a hold on you are negative spirit forces. You hear that? Negative spirit forces, 6 ether forces, sympathy, pity, apathy, jealousy, discontentment, self-defeat, inferiority complexes. We call that white magic. These feelings, which are within the hearts and minds of blacks, are sent to them by Imam or Leviathan. This means, although those negative spirit forces of white magic are within many of the captives, the blacks, they work against blacks because they are the allies of the captor, right? These are spirit forces of the Mukaso is in us from the mixing of our DNA, our blood. They're in our genetics, family. They really think they can trust the Tamhu or the Mukaso or the ghost man. Although many captives, Negroes, which is Negro means dead, are willing helpers or allies of this 6 ether force, right? They will only be used by this force for those that they follow the white ghost image, are compelled to do the very things that are preventing their rise from their bondage. So that's what you see that this brother, the black, the soldier, the black man, working for the ghost man, this self-hate. He goes on to say, it is a very depressive position for a race of people to be in, having forces within self constantly working against oneself in kind, right? We're possessed. We're possessed by these spirits, these demonic spirits. This force is called Ra'ah in the Hebrew Torah or Bible, the disagreeable or negative side of will, right? Not to be mistaken for the Egyptian deity of the sun called Re or Ra, our own force. They try to deceive you. The words look alike, but that is the position of the oppressed. And the only way to destroy the negative forces that maintain that position is to destroy the negativity and ignorance that those negative forces live and strive on, such as bright light and white magic. The acceptance of right knowledge is the solution, which leads to right thinking, and right thinking leads to right action and breaking away from their fire forces. Nubians or the new being or blacks do not just read this scroll and the others of right knowledge, but study them. Also, because these scrolls are dedicated and designed to offset and help destroy the negative Negro, that is Negro, which means dead black, and slave minds amongst you. The spell of ignorance is taught to us by the slave master with his white magic through Christianity, Judaism, Islam, right? They got us worshiping the white man as God. That's the spell, family. Also through other white religions of a spook or spirit or ghost worship. The Holy Ghost. Our people calling on the Holy Ghost every day. They don't realize they're calling on ghost spirit forces of the dead, which is their spirit forces, not ours. Question, tell me more about right knowledge. Answer. Right knowledge organizes and unifies the minds of Nawapians, that is Egyptian Moors, called black people, Negroes, African Americans, and others, individually and collectively. If knowledge is not to be confusing and thereby effective, it must be in sequence. Knowledge received must be in an organized sequence in order to put the mind in order and unity. One purpose of these scrolls is to help organize and put the minds of Nawapians in unity and order enough to qualify for your own effective spiritual science called Nawapo. Black magic is for black people. It will clear the fog and your single eye will reopen. Your clairvoyance will be restored. Family will return and you will see again. Nawapo and the forces and powers thereof are liberty, equality, justice, rightness, and proper survival for Nawapians, blacks everywhere. Nawapu and the powers that make it effective and binding are the equalizers for black folk, Egyptian Moors, in all fields of necessity and endeavors in which other races offer contests. Now, the liberation forces for Nawapians or blacks are not Caucasian and their form of Jesus or their Lord, their Allah, nor the spirit power names of any other race and their gods. The liberation forces for Nawapians or blacks are non-ether, whose scientific name is called Nupu, our science Nawapu. Non-ether is the original creative force that made these scrolls possible. Question: what is Negro mentality? Answer: Negro mentality is negative mentality, a slave mentality. The very word is negro, means dead, and negro, negra, omega, means black death. A Negro, negative, or slave mind is one regardless of how free you think you are. If you don't take control of your life, you are dead, right? As long as we're living under their system, getting their money, you're mentally dead. That's what we are, family. One who is in mental slavery knows no more or little more than what the Mukasu or the Tamhu, cursed albino seed, has written for public reading and spoken for public hearing. The Negro mentality knows no more or little more than what the Tamhu and their Negro helpers have taught. This is what I call synthetic education, which breeds a synthetic mind. This ties into the whole world of the Tamhu, right? The Mukasu. They make movies to portray themselves as being something they are not. Yet, the animation and graphics appear so real that you are convinced it is real and you believe it. This is done so that you will accept this kind of man as being superior. And if you are not like them, then of course you must be less or nothing. When in actuality, you are the supreme beings called gods who created them. You and your ancestors are descendants of the ancient Tamarians, are the real gods. You don't have a mind of your own. You are out of your mind. You are in his mind. Your preacher, imam, is holding their translation or of the scriptures he is teaching you from, or relates you to their books to cheat me, your reformer, Atumre, Amanubi Ra'akta. So these preachers, teachers, imams are really enforcing the evil teachings, and the results of the ghost spell are negative and slave mentalities, full with physical slaves and captives that must be resurrected from this mental death. Question: will these scrolls really help? Answer: yes. If a person has a Negro, negative, or slave mentality, these scrolls will help him or her get rid of it, provided the person does not just read, but studies the scrolls and accept the facts therein and herein. Facts can be rejected, but they can't be disproven. Those of you who've survived the year 2000, the showdown between agreeable and disagreeable, will accept these facts and stick to them. The Hika Kasut or the Mukasu do not and will not teach others besides their own race any real knowledge about universal forces, universal powers, and forces which would enable others to rule themselves. Moreover, other races are not going to give woolly-haired people, blacks, real universal knowledge and black magic, because real spiritual and universal knowledge is where real ruling power is found and exercised. This is something they, the Mukasu, the ghost man, may have knowledge of, yet still cannot exercise this spiritual power on their own without the help of self and kind, right? Our people who help them. Well, basically, we're using our energy, our non-ether energies to feed them. That's selling your soul, family. They wouldn't be as great as they are if it wasn't for us. That's why they enslaved us, because they couldn't do it on their own. They're using our soul force against us. So let me add, they have no power over you unless you or one of self and kind gives it to them. Just as vampires can't come into your home unless you welcome them. Stop trusting them. The same Negroes or dead blacks give them their power by worshiping their gods, Allahs, and their prophets, apostles, angels, and image. This must stop for us to regain our own power again when we ruled ourselves in Tamaray, right? Apophis, race of demons, you all living by white magic, and black folks should live by black magic, but they don't. They all live by white magic, a spell of ghosts, gospel under the white Indo-Aryan religions. If they had any real knowledge, they would be exercising these principles now. Instead, they use blacks as guinea pigs. They study your experiences and reactions and then go write a book about it as if they had knowledge of it themselves when they do not. You see white people all day on the History Channel talking about our culture as if they know us and just lie about Egypt, about Nubia, about Kush. They just lie like they really know our culture. But let's keep going. Question: are we to adhere to any teachings of the Mukasu, being that we are not taught right knowledge? Answer: yes. No one can really teach you but self and kind. For the time being, it may be permissible for the Mukasu to teach occupational knowledge, jobs and trades, along with computers, mathematics, works and subjects that no one can be deceived with, but not subjects like history, religion, such as Judaism, Christianism, Mohammedanism, or origins, because the Tamhur, the Mukasu seed, will not and sometimes cannot give others the facts about these subjects. The Tamhur, the albino seed, knows and teaches certain occupational jobs and trades according to present-day standards, and mathematics, which is a universal science which speaks for itself. But what can they teach anyone about morals and the best way of life when they are those who destroyed the real knowledge, morals, and the best way of life by suppressing and murdering darker peoples, lying to divide others, and creating ignorance and stealing other people's lands, cultures, and natural resources that are another people's heritage? The Hika Katsut or the Mukasu act like they are real Egyptians, right? The gods of Egypt, right? They position themselves as if they are the Egyptians, whatever. These white Africans, they call themselves. But that is why they were called the Jacobites, or Yakub grafted the devil. Jacob means supplanter. These same Hika Kasut, or the Canaanites, called Amorites or Jebusites, the Bible, those are Bible names for those who don't know, never did and never will give others true spiritual and universal knowledge, because much of it they do not know themselves. In secret lodges like the Knights of Templar, the Freemasons, the Knights of Columbus, the Rosicrucians, the Astara, the Theosophical Society, and the likes, use small portions of our knowledge, right? They got that from us. Madame Blavatsky of the Theosophical Society studied in Egypt family, for those who don't know. What they do know is kept amongst themselves so that they may continue to rule the ignorant and the poor in their Luciferian or Illuminati white brotherhood, such as the Skull and Bones, right? George Bush was a part of the Skull and Bones. You got the Hellfire Club. That was Benjamin Franklin, part of the Hellfire Club. Look it up. Benjamin Franklin, they found bodies under one of his homes, skulls and dead bodies, man. These people are beasts. Question: will education free us? Answer: no. Occupation, professional, and technical knowledge is what you need and should have, but you need more than that in order to be free and as gods gain and have ruling power. Occupational, vocational, professional, and technical knowledge are not sufficient to eliminate Negro negative and slave mentality. Negro or negative mentality, which is negative mind, is one which is void of real universal knowledge. Knowledge about time and origins of universes, stars, planets, satellites, origin of oceans, mountains, vegetation, time and origin of races, cultures, and what each race is supposed to represent, right? That's nature knowledge, family. And I do recommend to study the nature books that really go into origins, how the universe came about, family. For those who don't know, study the 9-ball and Bible interpretations and explanations, or also cover this universal knowledge that you'll never learn from the Mukasu. All they do is lie about the so-called universe and planets and life and culture. They're just liars to the core. Don't believe nothing they teach about those subjects. They, like on History Channel, they just mix truth with lie, mix truth with lie. That's all they do. Let's keep going. So the Negro mentality is void of its own true spiritual science, and the powers which maintain a racist spiritual science are those that create a racist culture, make its history, and direct its way of life. Therefore, if a race does not have its own true spiritual science, which is the black sciences, it is void of what is necessary to make it free and regain that God state of mind. In your case, Nuwapu is your true spiritual universal science. It will make you a God or a supreme being again, and non-ether utopian beings, right? So once you learn to open your third eye, you do the rituals, you harness this ether energy I'm telling you about. This is the spiritual science. You can communicate with higher dimensional beings, your ancestors who exist on higher dimensional. We live in a multiverse, family. They're not going to tell you about that. They're not going to give you the science about that. They keep that knowledge for themselves, because that's where, like the master said, that's where power is. Overstanding spiritual science, meaning spirit deals with the energies or forces of nature. And that's how they're able to manipulate things and create, with their inventions. The cell phone is part of that technology. Fighter, jet planes is a part of that technology. Overstanding gravitational forces. That's spiritual science. Overstanding, the electromagnetic forces. That's what quantum mechanics is all about. And we have the highest of spiritual scientists as Africans. And this is what the master teacher is dedicated to re-educate us about our true spiritual science that's designed for us. It's the only way we can get our power back. There is no other way. There is no other way. I hope this helps. Question: who are the fathers of today's ego-based Western society? So you have Francis Bacon, you have Isaac Newton, you have David Hume, you have John Locke. All these European men argue a concept that they call empiricism, which means you only know things by experience and evidence and not reason, which is the basis of Wu-Sabat. So they have our people stuck in this empiricist model. The empiricist model, when it comes to scientific thought, right? Here's your Isaac Newton. They love this guy. You have your Francis Bacon. He was the one who introduced the concept of empiricism. Basically, they were suppressing metaphysics. They didn't want people to know about metaphysics. They kept that secret about spiritual dimensions and other realms, right? Only deal with what your physical senses can pick up: see, hear, taste, smell, and feel, right? They base their science around that. That's called empiricism. Things that you can experience and evidence. Spirituality really deals with personal experience, not something you can technically prove, right? So if I see a UFO, I can't prove to someone I saw it. I know myself is an actual fact, but I can't prove that to anyone. And so in their culture, they disavow it. They'll say it doesn't exist. Since I can't prove it to them and prove it to you that I had that experience, it doesn't exist in their world. That's anti-Wu-Sabat. Because in our culture, we teach you must have personal experience to know things. So the master gives us knowledge so that we can learn to have personal experience of everything he's teaching. That's why we say it's actual facts, because we have the ability to experience it through the right methodologies, right? So let's go back. So these men set the basis for Western culture of living for the self, aka ego, and not some unprovable concept of going to a place called heaven that the church taught the masses of people or some metaphysical reality that could not be proven other than personal experience, right? And so this whole thing about the only thing that matters is the you here and now. Don't worry about no other realms that you're going to. Live for the now. This is what capitalism is based around, family. The concept of empiricism is all about the now. Do for live by your passions, right? Because that's the only thing that's real. This higher realms, that's not real. What's real is what you see in front of your face. They have the whole world on this philosophy right now. And this is what's feeding the ego, where everybody's worried about the self. You know, I got to get mine. You get yours. These men do not have souls. They have no connection to the divine. So as far as they are concerned, the divine or higher levels of existence does not exist. This is why the rulers of this world would do anything to keep people ignorant about any type of spiritual science, which would destroy their consumer-based economy, which has made them the richest and most powerful people on earth. Right. This economic system wouldn't work if people understood the science of death, the other realms, that you don't really die, that you actually have a spirit and a soul, and you're able to transcend from one incarnation to another incarnation, you know, going from body to body. Their economic model, people living for their selfish desires, all that would crumble. And if that crumbles, capitalism would crumble. And if capitalism crumbles, their whole system falls apart, which means they lose their power. So they can never allow spiritual science to become a dominant thing in their societies. We can only do this in our societies, which is why we have to create our own systems. We got to set, you know, our own cultures, because they won't allow that. That'll be the end of their rule. They know that. So let's keep going. We now live in a soulless world because of philosophies of empiricism that teach people to live for the here and now. Live by your passions. Do as thou will, which is a Luciferian doctrine. Western culture is based on these concepts, which is why people like Milton Friedman taught that capitalism should not care about the effects that capitalism has on persons, places, or things, because the market will correct any mistakes that it makes, aka they call that neoliberalism or Reaganomics or Project 25 that Trump is pushing now. So this guy, Milton Friedman, for those who don't know him, very important, Mukaso, to look him up. Look him up. Hold on. Let's go back. Milton Friedman. Today's capitalist model is based on this guy's philosophy. It's based on Milton Friedman's philosophy, family. This is him right here. Look him up. You know, he's the one that they teach. The corporation be able to do whatever the hell they want to do. And they don't care about the effects of whatever the corporation does, because of the fact that the thinking is that if the corporation is so bad, people won't support it. People will stop supporting it if it's so bad, you know. But that's googly gawk. That's trick knowledge. That's insanity. These corporations lie, cheat, and steal as long as they can. And when they put a stop to them, they'll start again. They'll close that down and start again. That's what they do. That's what Donald Trump. In fact, that's how Donald Trump actually made a lot of his money, by bankrupting businesses. What do they say? He had like 6 bankruptcies. What they do is they buy a company, like he was buying casinos. You drain all the money out of it. Right? You take out a loan. What they do, they take out a loan to buy a business. They drain the money out of the business, and then they let it fall and collapse. That's a business model that they do. You know, they don't stop doing it. And then they file bankruptcy and start again. Keep it going, family. That's why they're firing people. They can care less what happens to you. You know, Elon Musk and all them, Trump and them, what they're doing, they can care less. That's how the corporations operate. They can care less about their polluting and destroying the planet. So he taught that corporations, this Milton Friedman guy, he taught that corporations should never care about what happens to the people they fire or communities that they impoverish or environments that they pollute. People have the right or freedom to patronize a business or work for a business or not. They call that right to work. Where I live in Georgia, they call that a right to work state, meaning that you have the right to apply for a job and work for that company, just like the company has a right to fire you without considering the economic impact it has on you. That's the right to work, right? So they don't have the right to give you a job, just like you don't have the right to go work for them. It's a right to work. The problem with that is they know that people need money to live. So they know you have to have a damn job. This is why a company can treat you any way they want to treat you, because they can hire and fire you whenever they want. Now, some states don't allow that, but this is why Trump and them, like government jobs, don't allow that kind of treatment of the employees. That's why Trump and Elon Musk and them they're trying to dismantle the government the way they're doing, because they want to get rid of that whole concept, worker protections. You know, that's why they destroyed Ronald Reagan. And was the one who destroyed a lot of the unions. Corporations really can't dominate with unions demanding people get this high pay or whatever. That's why they took the corporations out of America and moved them overseas. And now they're mad at China because China took advantage of that, that these corporations going over there, and China was able to build themselves up using that model, while America was just getting rid of their factories and all their businesses because they wanted cheap labor. China was smart enough to utilize that cheap labor, and they built their economies, you know. And now America is upset that China took advantage of that, and they're now just as powerful as the United States, you know, because they don't want United States don't want equality. They're gonna be equal because they can't take advantage of you, because they know their culture is based on exploitation. The whole system is designed to take advantage of people. The point around this kind of thinking is that if you don't like something, then you don't support it, which kind of makes sense if you never understood the harm of this kind of economic system, right? So that's what they're saying with their corporations. If you don't like it, don't support it. And that's cool, you know, but the concept of letting a company do whatever the hell it wants to do, there's so many drawbacks to that, which is we see it now. It pollutes the environment. They poison the people. They can care less. You know, they care less that people go into poverty, the homelessness. It creates more crime in the community. They don't realize, they don't care that they're creating all these problems, these corporations. So white people love to tell you the upside of something that is in their best interest while ignoring the negative effects of the things they promote, which plays out in all the commercials that that are designed to brainwash the viewer, right? The commercials always shows the positive side of the product or service and never tells you the drawback. You know, so they'll tell you to eat Cheerios all day, every damn day, not telling you, well, this food will create cancer, give you high blood pressure. They'll tell you that. I mean, the drug commercials got to tell you now, because they've been killing so many people. So the drug commercials literally got to tell you that their products kill you. So on one level, they tell you it's going to save you. On another level, it's going to kill you. It's insanity. And people buy it anyway. That's that, you know, you're under a spell when you buy a product that tells you it'll kill you. This kind of mindset is what justifies slavery, because black people was property, and they taught that they have a God-given right to private property. The goal is for corporations to rule with limited to no government control, which is what Trump is working to bring to life as we speak, right? So this is what's going on in the Trump government. They want corporations to do whatever the hell they want. That's why they're trying to get rid of the student loan stuff. They want the government to stop, you know, servicing the student loans, so that companies can take the student loans over and they can charge whatever high interest rate they want. Why? Because they want to get people to stop going to schools, because they want to turn all schools private, and they want to get rid of all government schools so that they can control education more, because an educated people can stop tyranny, a terrorizing government. Uneducated population, you know, will just let their leaders do whatever the hell they want. Question number 7. What are other ways our ego and self-hate show? Answer. Today's concept of nation states are relations based on ego. Just like sports teams, corporations, political groups, and many other ways that cause people to come together. People join organizations because they want to be around people who think the same rather than people who don't have a connection with, who they don't have a connection with, right? So they want to be around people that think the same rather than people they don't have a connection with. This is what create groups we're saying here. Then goes on to say, which is why nation states and special organizations are known to discriminate or exclude those considered outsiders. Like you see the immigration issue we see in this country and around the world. People like to connect with organizations or groups, usually to fulfill their ego needs of connection. Nations or tribes are supposed to connect based on genetic relationships, but in the world we live in today, these connections usually occur to satisfy most people's ego needs, right? So nations really should be based on genetics, family, not based on your personal needs and desires, which is how organizations, nations are set up today. Everybody have the same, individual agenda. They're all agreeing on it. Like, again, the United States is capitalism. So everybody here is trying to be a capitalist, make money, make money. Okay, so now, and people who are not, the workers, employees, you suffer. That's why you can't really be in America and not have a business, because most of us, Black people, we all have jobs. And so we're at the mercy of the employer. The ego builds a strong personality as a person grows older because of their life experiences. So the older one becomes, the harder it is to reach them, which is why it's difficult to wake adults up and easier to teach children. Children's awareness is vivid and open when they are young and become vague and closed as they grow older, usually by age 13, right? So that's how children are all, they're always asking questions. They're inquisitive. They're trying to figure the world out. And as you grow older, you become more vague and you're more centered and your personality develops. And that's when the ego takes in. And this is around 13. When your mind gradually closes off to other outside concepts and you focus on whatever direction your personality is going to take you. And it solidifies your ego. And this starts around 13 and it matures as you grow older. It gets stronger and stronger. Sadly, most students join the WAPO because of their ego needs to fulfill connections for whatever reason. They seem to join to fulfill some kind of personal desire as opposed to being committed to learning truth and spreading this truth to any and all who would listen. Right? So people usually join organizations like ours because they want to escape racism, white supremacy. They want to be a part of a Black organization. It's usually rooted in the ego, something that they want, as opposed to, what can I do to help build this so we can, serve, right? The mindset is not I'm coming to serve. It's more or less, I'm coming because what can y'all do for me? That's usually how people join organizations, myself included. I joined the same way, because I wanted answers to why the world was the way it was. I'm searching for that. See, that's my ego. I'm not saying it's negative or bad, but when you come to something with your own personal ego, you come for a desire. When that desire is fulfilled, then you move on. That's why a lot of people leave organizations, because they wasn't there to help the organization. They was there for the organization to help them. John F. Kennedy talked about that. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, right? He was trying to make Americans question their ego mentality. Let's go on. This, I would guess, is why so many students of NWAPO keep to themselves in this day and time, even though the obligation of all students of Wu-Sabat is to teach the doctrine and work to build our own communities. I would also argue that many ex-students of NWAPO have leave because their ego or personal desires are not being fulfilled, so they decide to move on, while usually pointing to something they see as negative as their primary excuse to leave. I speak to this point from my personal experience with these types of people because I've dealt with many over the past 3 decades. Nawapo has nothing to do with people's personal desires and everything to do with living a life based on sound right reasoning in harmony with natural nature. The goal is to live according to the rules of natural nature, but unfortunately, many, if not most, students join not understanding this obligation or have no intentions of fulfilling this obligation. We live in a world where people have been educated to live according to their own will, and once they realize this is not the way of Wu-Sabat, they move on to something else. The Luciferian doctrine is to do as thou will, aka American culture, or rather Western culture, that the whole planet has succumbed to. And family, the Luciferian doctrine, y'all need to watch. They made a TV show about Lucifer, right? Another name for the devil. And it was perfect because of the fact that the whole show was about this ego mentality. You know, the whole show was based on that right here. This show right here, Lucifer. It was all based on the ego, and you know, Lucifer. You need to watch the show if you're not familiar with it. You know, because it literally explains what Lucifer, the Luciferian, is all about: the ego, the self. You know, and it's an excellent show that shows that. That's the nature of the devil. So I hope it's on Netflix for those who don't know. It's on Netflix. If you get Netflix, you can watch it. Study these shows. And because it's designed to brainwash the people, to teach the people that it's okay to behave like that. And you see it in our people. You see it in our people, family. They succumb to this brainwashing. It's very sophisticated if you don't have right knowledge to understand what's being done to you. So the master teacher says, read the family guide prayer that teaches students that our goal is to serve, not rule. The best of leaders are the best of servants, unlike world leaders today who rule to enrich themselves at the expense of the people they are supposed to serve. All those who refuse or cannot overcome their own personal desires or ego most likely will experience a rebirth, aka reincarnation, to start again, along with a memory wipe. Panaba Yananan has told us that most of us have reincarnated 9,000 times when you get 24,000 incarnations, right? So that's food for thought. You're supposed to be resurrecting out of this realm. This is the third density. You're supposed to be resurrecting out of this realm. This is the third density. You don't want to keep stuck in a loop, a cycle, reincarnation loop. You get 24,000 times to get out of here. This is your time, family, because you have a master teacher giving you the right knowledge that you need to be able to transcend into the other realms. That's the power of this doctrine. Our people who are basically spiritually ignorant, who has no knowledge about multi-dimensions and higher dimensional realms. And as long as they keep following the Mukasu and his ego-based culture, you're stuck down here. Know that the ego is the cause of so much self-hate among Black people. We see this play out with so many Black people mating with white people, doing everything to look like them, act like them, feel like them, serve them, produce children with them, all based on you living according to your will and not the will of natural nature. Little do they know, this is called genetic annihilation of your own bloodline. No different than gay culture, right? Gays, you know, that's a culture that's the end of your bloodline. 2 men, you'll never produce a duplicate. That's the end of you. Although this Mukasu is allowing gay people to adopt children. It's very sad. You know, we live in a very toxic system Exposing children to that mentality, it's the end of humanity. If everybody becomes gay on planet Earth, that's the end of humanity. What kind of culture is that? That doesn't make any sense. It's one thing you have that desire, because that really, the gay culture is purely based on ego, because it's based on your sexual desires. That's all it is. It has no other benefit other than that. A healthy relationship between a man and a woman is to reproduce, to copy yourself, so that life can be perpetual, because the basis of life is life. The basis of life is not death. So why would you embrace a culture that perpetuates the death, like their religions teach you to call on the dead? We call on familiar spirits, our ancestors, not unfamiliar spirits, family. Let's keep it going. So we see the self-hate in Black people who are willing to sell out their own race for jobs, money, status, fame, or the many accounts of Black on Black violence we see all over the world. They will kill and forsake their own to fulfill their own egos. Today, we see Black people do all kinds of things to their bodies that is either rooted in self-hate or just obsessive egos, such as all the tattoos we paint our bodies with, the obsession with synthetic hairstyles, even at the expense of our daughters' self-esteem or even their own personal health. Listen to the toxic music and movies that we create without a care of how these negative projections affect us as a race. Fam, just look at all the basketball players. Look at how many of them have tattoos all over their damn body. I mean, it's insane. All this painting. Again, that's just the ego. It's the ego. They don't realize it's not healthy. And of course, we see all the synthetic hair that our women use, and not even caring about the effects that has on young Black girls. Synthetic hair is basically unhealthy, as opposed to your natural hair. Anything that's artificial is unhealthy to the body. You add anything to the body that's artificial is unhealthy for the body. I don't care. That's breast implants. That's a filling in your mouth, right? For fillings, for tooth decay. All that stuff. Anything that's artificial is unhealthy. And so if you don't want to have those experiences, you have to live a healthy culture so that you don't degenerate yourself. But we live a culture that degenerates us, so we do all these artificial things to keep ourselves looking. This is why you see a lot of people with money. What do? They spend all kind of money to alter their bodies to try to look young. It's all synthetic. Anything that's synthetic is unhealthy, family. Let's keep going. I would argue that a lot of students don't even watch my lectures because of their ego of how I point out our cultural principles that most don't want to adhere to, or how I keep talking about the obligations of a Sabaean, solutions to our challenges that students rather ignore. People like to look for negatives to give themselves an excuse to ignore truth. As the saying goes, that only fools duck when the truth is thrown at them. As students of Wu-Sabat, we should be looking to work with those who are serious about living our culture using the highest level of sound reasoning. Looking at the conditions in the world today, we should be running to each other and not avoiding each other. I want to read this scroll the master put out about the 9. He's talking about our obligations. This is the 9 scroll. This is where page 101. Page 1. This is a scroll called the 9, right? By Baba Yananan. Excuse me. And we go to page 101. It's called Pa Mibsar Mpa Munwapo, the Gospel of the Nawapians. And it reads, the Gospel of the Nawapians, of the people of the religions of the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran, and the Book of Mormons, and the religions and fractions of the Adamite races. Those who believe by way of fictions and liars with no confirmations. Nawapians, Be no longer deceived by way of them and their own stories about their own two races, the whites and the reds. The last two races made 6,000 years back from the year 2000. The Wapians, you all have the truth, the way, the actual facts, and Wu-Nawap. Now you all are blessed with it. Take it and teach it. Spread it to all peoples. Nawapians, preach it. Let it preach it. It is for all who will listen. Nawapians, each of you all who know the truth must teach others. It is your obligation to be helpers, revive the world, redeem the lost, the confused by way of Wu-Nawap, Nawapians. So family, I just wanted to show you your obligation, as students of Wu-Sabat. If you are truly a student of Wu-Sabat, a student of Wu-Nawap, you understand your obligation is to teach, spread this knowledge. That's why my job is to help you better comprehend the doctrine so that you can better, display it for others out there. That's I'm doing my part, you do your part, right? I do my part, you do your part. Spread this doctrine. Okay, question. Well, should I cover some? There's so much stuff, you need to know, dealing with. But let me show you something. This is just dealing with this self-hate thing that we that's so powerful with our people, and that there's a professor, Henry Louis Gates. He always does the genetic test. He's famous for that, but he was against a lot of the black scholars that taught, from an African perspective. He was anti, this African perspective, even though he talks about African history and blah, blah, blah. Henry Louis Gates, he's always doing, these genetic tests to show, movie stars and athletes and famous people, their genetic origins, through slavery back to Africa and all that stuff. I just want to show you that this psychology of, this self-hate. Listen to this.
That's what I was striving to do.
At one point, you have a line in there, something to the effect, my mother despised white people.
Yeah, my mother hated white people.
All her life?
Probably. I didn't know until...
You see that? His mother hated white people.
1959.
For good reason.
We were watching Mike Wallace's documentary called The Hate That Hate Produced. It's about the Nation of Islam. And I couldn't believe, Malcolm X was talking about the white man was the devil and standing up in white people's faces and telling them off. It was great. It's what black people did behind closed doors, but they would never do it. And they were too vulnerable to do it, say where they worked, at the paper mill or downtown, as we would call it. And here was a guy who had the nerve to do that. And I think if I'd been a character in a cartoon, my eyes would go doing like this. I couldn't believe it. As I sat cowering in a corner of our living room, I glanced over at Mama, and her face was radiant. This smile, beatific smile, started to transform her face. And she said quite quietly, "Amen." And then she said, "All right now." And she sat up and she was saying yes. And she loved Malcolm X, and she loved what the Muslims were doing. And I couldn't believe it. It was like, as I write, it was like watching the Wicked Witch of the West emerge out of the transforming features of Dorothy.
He called his own mother the Wicked Witch because of her hating what white people represent. She didn't hate them for no reason. She was hating them for how they treat us, how they treated her. And she was looking for a hero like Malcolm X, who was teaching our people the truth. And this brother, her own son, is looking at his own mother like she's crazy. Who's the crazy one? I'm like, who's the crazy one? But you'll see why it's crazy. I think I showed this before. If you haven't seen it, I hope you know this brother, because like I said, he does all the genetic. He's older now. This is when he was younger. He does all the DNA testing, and on PBS or whatever for black people, and He's a historian, but he used to attack, the African black scholars, basically like John Henry Clark and people like Dr. Ben and stuff like that. He's part of that, those Negroes who will conform to the Mukasu. And you see he's having an issue with his own mother, who wants to deal with the reality of living under Western culture. Keep listening.
This person I had thought of as this pioneer of the civil rights movement really had a hard time with white people. And the more I got to know her, and these weren't easy anecdotes for her to repeat. But the older I got, she became more willing to share painful experiences of white racism, the way that she was treated when she was a girl and a servant in the house of wealthy white people, just a block down the hill from where we lived. My brother and I eventually went back and bought that house for her, and that's how we found out that she had been so horribly treated by these people. She never trusted white people. She didn't like white people. She didn't want to live with white people. But she wanted us to go to integrated schools. She wanted us to live in an integrated economy.
That was the mistake. See, she understood dealing with whitey, but the mistake was we send our children to be educated by them, and that's why he thinks the way he thinks. The brainwashing takes effect. When we send our children to be educated by them, then you can forget it. It's going to take your child's mind, because their schools are not designed to teach you anything about being black. It's to teach you to serve white culture, European culture. It doesn't teach you to serve a black culture, because you don't learn anything about black culture. Everything is European culture through their educational system. Their educational system is very, very dangerous. It's very dangerous, very dangerous. And this is how he got caught up. We send our children, and that's the mistake. And so he's not even identifying with his own mother, trying to tell him about white people. He does not identify. And keep listening. See what he says.
She wanted us even to live in integrated neighborhoods. She wanted us to be able to get the best that American society offered. She wanted us to be articulate, to speak white English, as we would call it, as well as black vernacular English. She wanted us to know how to dress, how to talk, how to act, how to behave. She wanted us to go to private school.
Basically, she wanted them to integrate with whiteness. Because and I get it. She didn't, like so many black people, they don't know what else to do, because they don't have any knowledge of self. They don't know what else. So they thinking, white man is in power. So my children, in order for my children to survive, they need to conform to whiteness. But we don't understand the danger of us doing that, because you lose your soul. What profits a person to gain the whole world and lose their soul? You lose your spiritual connection to your ancestors. And that's why I said you're stuck in the spiritual loop, family. So I bring up, let me go back here. I bring up the scroll. Where is it at? The scroll. This is a very powerful scroll. Very powerful scroll. And this is the message of Yanu, and the master, creates the diagram here about the dimensions, right? This is a planet Earth in the middle. Okay, planet Earth in the middle. You got to go through 9 gates to get to the 4th dimension, the higher realms. The realms where the Nathar is, while ancestors, they live in higher dimensional realms. All these extraterrestrials people keep talking about, these beings existing in higher dimensional realms. You got to get past that. In order to get past the dimensional gates, when you transition, right, so-called die, your soul, you need your soul to do it, to connect you, your mind. That's why you do the rituals, the prayer, the chanting, all the things we teach, to connect you with your ancestors, so that once you physically die, you can then connect with them, right? And on those realms, and they have to escort you through these gates to get through these gates and all. So there's 9. This is the 9th gate to get through. It opens up. The master said at 3 a.m. every day. These gates, you have to know how to ascend to get out of this realm. If you don't know how to do it, you keep reincarnating. You get stuck here. You keep reincarnating, a rebirth. That's what we mean. You lose your soul. You lose your connection to the higher realms by becoming a servant of the European culture, living their culture. You cut yourself off, family. You cut yourself off and be stuck down here. And that's what's happening to us. This is what makes the master teacher the master teacher, teaching you things that no one on this planet is teaching our people this stuff. This vital knowledge, what it really means to lose your soul, to lose your spiritual connection to your ancestors. To lose your spiritual connection to your ancestors and to the other realms, higher dimensional realms. This stuff is real. You know, so the master put out, what is it? The book right here. The book right here. What is, let's see, where is it at? What is spirit and soul? What is spirit and soul? Right? Is this the one I want? Yep, this is it. Right here. Right here. This right here. Let's see. Question: is the spirit what takes you to the next plane? This is what is spirit and soul? This is page 46. 46. What is spirit and soul? Master teacher put this back out back in like 2000 or so. Question: the spirit is what takes you to the next plane? Answer: yes. It is the spirit that decides whether you move to a higher plane or burn out your desires for the physical plane, right? We're on the third density, family. The person who has strong love for the physical desire, that's that ego. The person who has strong love for the physical world will desire a rebirth to the physical plane. And you can do that 24,000 times. If you don't reincarnate out of here, then your spirit dissipates. It gets weak. It's like the Mukasu. They can't get out of here because they don't have a soul force. So they're trapped down here because you need a soul force to get out of here. And also they're trapped. They keep reincarnating themselves. Unless they can get their souls restored, the master teacher said. You know, they can get it, but they need right knowledge in order to do it. Right here, page 43. The soul is what enables man or Nagato to tune into these vibrations of the universe. You need your soul force to connect with the different frequencies, right? The different vibrational realms that we're in. That's why humans are not in tune with it, because humans are not in tune with their own soul. So you don't even realize you're living in a construct of energies around energies. We're encoded, it's all around us. It's literally all around us. You know, now you know there's cell phone energies, there's microwave energies, there's radio energies, television waves. You don't feel them, but you should. If you was sensitive in tune, if you raise your vibration, you'll be in tune with these energies. And there are energy fields or magnetic energy fields that separates this realm from the next. As you raise in spiritual knowledge, you'll be able to perceive it. But it's not. Because we're ignorant, we live in a culture that doesn't tell you none of this stuff, that keeps you ignorant. We're stuck down here. You're stuck. And we're trying to give you the keys to getting out of here. Trying to give you keys, you know. But you got brothers like this, and at the level of self-hate. Keep going. Listen to him. You know, listen to his ending.
To the Ivy League. I mean, she wanted us to be as successful as it was humanly possible to be in American society, but she always wanted us to remember first and last that we were black and that you can never trust white people. And so when I brought my fiance home, who happened to be a white American, I thought World War III was about to break out between me and my mother, not to mention between my mother and my fiance.
And is your wife white?
Yeah, she's white.
How did your mother react to did she go to the marriage?
Oh, yeah, she was fine.
So you got with a white woman. So that's genetic annihilation, you know, genetic annihilation. If you don't have right knowledge, you that's it for you. Now, if he had right knowledge and he was with a Mukaso, that's different. Let's say he transformed into a Nawapian and he gains right knowledge, then that reconnects him with your ancestors, right? Which then can help that female, the white female. He can assist her genetics and vibrate it upward. Once he restores his soul, he can actually, she moves through his soul. I mean, that's a whole science. That's a whole nother discussion. But my point being is that the mistake that his mother make, like all of us make, our parents make, they send us to their schools, and this is where the brainwashing starts. And we lose knowledge of self, or we never even get knowledge of self. And all we get is knowledge of them, which then makes us love them and hate ourselves. It's that simple. Question. What would it be like once we are functioning at our highest level of intelligence, aka our nine mind? Answer. The nine mind is also known as the God mind, where all that you think to do can be done as long as it is in harmony with natural nature. The God mind rules self among their own kind, who rules as one mind with many bodies. Our main goal in life is to restore our divine minds of sound right reasoning, which would give us use of our dormant third eye, being able to now see interdimensionally. Once you can do that, you can make contact with your ancestors, the Nathar, our higher dimensional family. It is fun being. Is it fun being ruled by others? Is it cool that we have to work for others who build wealth off of our labor? Is it reasonable that others own businesses in our neighborhoods getting rich off of our income? How does it make sense for us to vote for white men to rule us? How can we ever gain world respect if all see that we view others and not ourselves as the image of beauty? Our power within can manifest once we learn to overcome the ego that is fueled by lower forces that plague us, and then our greatness can shine forth for all to see. Question. Last question, family. What is the mental reservoir and our mind's connection or link to it? The wisdom of the Hutri taught us that all is mind or mental. The source of all intelligence is the mental reservoir. The goal of all students of Wu-Sabat is to learn how to consciously connect to the mental reservoir. It is your level of reasoning that would teach you how to connect with the mental reservoir. The key to high levels of reasoning is connected to high levels of knowledge, in which we call having access to right knowledge. Right knowledge is what gives us the necessary information that is our access to sound right reasoning for those who choose to study and apply the lessons learned from right knowledge. What I'm saying, what I'm saying is that if you want to raise your level of intelligence to solve all your problems in life and overcome your ego, then you must study right knowledge, which in turn increases your reasoning, which in turn connects you with the mental reservoir, which is the source of all intelligence, which is known as the Philosopher's Stone, or aka the Maf Kuzet. All right, so the master, if you refer to this master's secret, this scroll that was put out, where the master talks about the mental reservoir. This is Master Secret, Dimensional Links, and the Nabat, the Sacred Ash. And this particular scroll does an excellent job. Your dimensional link talks about the mental reservoir and how to connect with it. It's the vibrating frequency just above this realm, right? And so we have the material realm, we have the spiritual realm, we have the physical material realm, and we have the spiritual realm. I talk about that a lot. In fact, let's let's bring up, let's see. Well, I did all that reading, but you guys didn't see what I was reading, but you heard what I was reading. Because my I didn't refresh my screen, but I refreshed it now. But I want to bring up another last one that, you know, I always bring up video about the spiritual realm. The Doctor Strange movie I like to talk about a lot. And it's so important that we get this concept, because students they have a very difficult time. I understand what, the spiritual aspects of what we're teaching, because of the materialistic mindset that we've been conditioned under. So it's very difficult for a lot of students to embrace the spiritual concepts, the other realms, the other dimensions. It's tough, and so I try my best to help with that level of knowledge, to help make it easy. Now, if you guys ask more questions on it, well, you have to study the doctrine more intently. As you're studying, you'll get better questions to ask, detailed questions. I mean, just study the lectures that I've been putting out with and I'm citing the books, the scrolls. If you really analyze it, I think it'll help with questions, right? So here's the
You're a man looking at the world
the
through
master
a
and
keyhole.
student
You've spent
relationship.
your whole life trying to widen that keyhole, to see more, to know more. And now, on hearing that it can be widened in ways you can't imagine, you reject the possibility.
No, I reject it because I do not believe in fairy tales about chakras or energy or the power of belief. There is no such thing as spirit. We are made of matter and nothing more. You're just another tiny, momentary speck within an indifferent universe.
So you see, that's the imperialistic model, right? And so the imperialism model teaches that the spiritual realm doesn't exist. So this Doctor Strange movie that I highly recommend, and I've been telling you guys over and over to really study this film to understand the science, the material. We're on the material realm versus the other dimensions, the other, realities. And she's a spiritual master. He's talking to a spiritual master who's trying to educate him about what real existence is. And he's having a hard time because he's been educated through the Western school system, who don't teach you these things. So we ignore it, right? And I told you, only Western culture does that. China understands it, right? They understand chi. East India, they understand prana. All the ancient societies know the realities, except the Europeans, because they're new. They only been here for 6,000 years. Everyone else been here for millions of years. The Asians been here for millions of years with us. We're the first, but because we don't really have a birthday. But everybody been around except for the Mukasa. He's only 6,000 years old, and that's why his culture only goes back. His religion tells him they're only 6,000 years. This Adam and Eve, that's 6,000 years. That's it. So they don't have this knowledge.
You think too little of yourself.
Oh, you think you see through me, do you? I don't. But I see through you.
So now the physical body, the spiritual body, he's separated. The physical body, the spiritual body. You have to become in tune with your spiritual body, not just your physical. That's the only way the right knowledge will make any sense. Again, that's why a lot of people can't deal with what we're teaching, because they're literally spiritually dead. They have no concept of their own spiritual essence. They're mentally dead. And when you're stuck in that ego, all you're doing is searching for person, places, and things in the material world, and you never consider the spiritual realm, the dream realm. That the dream realm is a reality all to itself. It's almost like a virtual reality, the dream world, because you can create whatever you want in the dream realm. That's an actual realm. People who are into lucid dreaming are very familiar with it. That was a lot. We've been here for a while. You know, take your time, share, share, share. I hope you now have a better comprehension of the ego and how the ego works and how it's harming us by living this European culture, and the importance of us coming together to create our own, you know, to get away from this. You know, it's up to you. It's up to you, family. Support what we do. Share, share, share. You know, get this knowledge out. I noticed a lot of male men listen to my lectures, not that many females. You brothers need to share this with females, because the nation only grows if the female is growing. The nation only grows if the female is growing. If you're not getting the females involved, how are we going to grow? Men can't do it. The women are the ones who bear the children. You know, Wu-Sabat is a matriarch doctrine. It's about the matriarch, the feminine. You know, Wu-Sabat is a feminine energy. And ancient in Kemet, you had the triad. You had Amun, you had Mu or Mutat, Mut, and you had Kansu. Mutat was the feminine representation of Amun. Mut or Nut or Neat or Noon. That's feminine energy, family. That's feminine energy. The Nathar Tat Mut, right, comes out of, you know, that's, you know, out of Kush. You know, so that feminine energy, you have to have both the masculine energy and the feminine energy. Get your daughters, your sisters, your aunts, your nieces, your wives. Get them involved. They need this knowledge to teach to the children. Because our women, unfortunately, are obsessed with European culture. They love them all. They love buying stuff, you know, and that's fine. Don't deprive them of that, because they have to naturally grow like anything in nature. You got to naturally grow into something, you know, so help them along. Be gentle, because our feminine, they're gentle. They need flowers. Don't be hard. Men is hard. Men are rocks. The woman is a feather. That's why it's matte. Feather. It's strong, though. It's soft, but it's strong. With that being said, I hope this video turned out. Sometimes I notice the videos have these sound glitches, so bear with it. You know, I'll check into it further to clear that up. But with that being said, much love, much peace, and why do we sorry.